Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the third Regional Development Assessment Panel meeting. Today, myself as presiding member, and we have Ms. Lindsay Baxter as the deputy presiding member, and Ms. Nima French as the specialist member. Declare the meeting open at 9:35. And in doing so, acknowledge the traditional owners and elders, past and present, land upon which we're meeting today. An apology from Councillor Greenwich from the Shire of Yilgarn. There are no members listed as being on leave of absence, and minutes from previous meetings are available on the DAP website. Declarations of due consideration. This is for the City of Karratha. Have all panel members duly considered all the documentation before you today? Indication there, thank you very much. Are there any disclosures of interest? Okay, no declarations of interest there, thank you very much for that. Move on to item 4.1. which is the workers' accommodation at Stove Hill. There are two presenters, Mr. Reid and Mr. Sayer. Mr. Reid, over to you for 3 minutes.
Yes, look, thank you, Mr. Chairman and panel members. Look, I don't actually have a lot to add. That you've seen my presentation already, including the PowerPoint that simply demonstrates the quality that was in stage 1 that'll be rolled out to stage 2. So I'm happy to share it if required, but otherwise I'll just keep going. As I said, I believe it's quite straightforward, and the city's RAR is actually really comprehensive and covers everything quite well. So we're happy with the amended conditions as they're recommended. We believe we meet the litmus tests to allow the extension of time, and the applications in accordance with the specific objectives of the development area under the scheme is in accordance with the structure plan. It's as per the DA that's already been issued. So orderly and proper planning has been addressed as well. We just need the extension of time to basically secure a major tenant that we have a lease that enables us to draw down on the loan facility and basically build the development. There's a massive shortfall of a rental accommodation in particular in Karratha. This is only good for this city and helping it achieve its objectives. Anthony Cyprian is also online. He's the client representative, but both of us are basically here to answer any questions of the panel.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reid. Mr. Sayer, did you want to?
Chris Sayer's at the Shire. He's
yes, that's right. Sorry, I'll go to questions first of all. Then thank you, Mr. Reid. Questions of Mr. Reid or Mr. Cyprian? Okay, look, thank you very much for the presentation. No questions. I'll move to the city. Mr. Sayer. Just bear with us. We're just trying to get him into the room.
Hi, Chris, it's Ashley at the DAP Secretariat. If you can just accept to be a panelist so that we can hear you.
So you can hear me now?
Yes. Thanks, Chris. Good morning. Is there anything you wanted to say or just take questions? Up to you.
I'll just take questions. I think the report covers our position.
Yes, okay. Are there questions of Mr. Sayer? Yes.
I do have a question. Chris, Lindsay Baxter here from the panel. In the RAR, on page 2 of the RAR, it refers to the decision constituting planning approval for 4 years. But the amended condition that we've got in front of us for the recommendation refers to 2. Which is it? Is it 2 or 4 years?
The recommended condition is for 2 years to substantially commence. The application from the applicant originally proposed 4 years to substantially commence. but through the course of the assessment, we've agreed on the 2-year substantially commenced as the recommended condition.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further questions from the panel? No? Okay, thank you, Chris, for that. We'll move on to the item. I'll seek a mover and a seconder for the recommendation as published. Is there a mover for that? Yes. Thank you, Lindsay Baxter. And seconded. Thank you. Lindsay, over to you.
Thank you. I'm prepared to move the recommendation for this application on the basis that it was assessed and approved by a development assessment panel in 2019. It is in effect a reapproval pursuant to the legislative framework and is compliant with the criteria which it needs to be considered as identified in pages 5 and 6 of the Responsible Authority report. So I'm supportive of the amended conditions and the advice note. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Remke.
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you. For this time, I'm more than happy to support the proposal as well. It's been thoroughly examined and I see no issue at all in extending that period. Are there any other speakers? No, okay. Right, that's it. So I'll put the motion as published. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks to the Karratha guys and David Reid, etc. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on. There were no sat items for Karratha. Going to the Shire of Yilgarn. Yeah. All right, just to welcome everybody for this item. Declarations of due consideration. Can all panel members please confirm they've duly considered the matter? Can we see the Shire of Yilgarn councillor?
Yeah. Agree. Can you hear me there?
Can hear you. Is there a visual?
Where are you going?
Yeah. Councillor Close, are you able to turn on the camera so we can see you?
We're trying to do now. There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. So just to confirm that again, declaration of due consideration is everybody familiar with the material before you today? Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest? No. All right. Thank you very much. We'll move on then to the item 3.1, which is the proposed renewable energy facility. And we have a number of presenters. I have agreed to up to 15 minutes for all the presenters, external presenters. So Mr. Hockley, we'll start with, I presume we'll start with you, and you can introduce your presenters as you go. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Just like that.
Where would you like? Just
Just sit back. Yeah.
Yeah, so just grab a seat here and I've got to.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. What we might do, if it's okay with the panel, is run through the speakers, and if there's questions, we're happy to address them as a group at the end if that suits. Okay. Thank you. Look, I'm speaking today in support of the proposed renewable energy facility. I have Ross Traynor with me representing the proponents, Yilgarn Holdings Proprietary Limited, who's also available to answer questions. And as you'll hear today, the proponent and developer, Fortescue Energy, remain very much committed to progressing this renewable energy project, comprising the installation of 10 wind turbines and 10 megawatt hours of battery storage across 4 rural lots in Southern Cross. The project comprises the first stage of a potential future $1 billion wind farm project within the Shire, which will cater for the long-term energy needs of the community, consistent with the environmental objectives of the Shire's strategic community plan and the strategic goals of the state. But before moving into the proposal, I wish to firstly and briefly respond to two core aspects of the RAR that require clarification, which we say are already addressed or can be addressed by way of conditions. Firstly, we say it's not correct when the RAR suggests that there are outstanding matters associated with determining safe operational procedures associated with the wind farm and the use of the Southern Cross Aerodrome. These have been thoroughly addressed by the proponents, aviation consultants, aviation projects, and Global Airspace Solutions, which are both CASA-approved organisations. Their findings have also been accepted and supported by Maroomba Airlines and the Royal Flying Doctor Service, and also Air Services Australia. But to ensure there's no uncertainty as to both the work proposed and the commitment that the wind farm developer must implement to ensure ongoing and safe aerodrome operations, we have included all the relevant works in the schedule of draft conditions and Appendix 1 of my written deputation lodged earlier this week, which can be imposed so that those works run with the approval and are ongoing. Secondly, the RAR suggests there's a lack of commitment and certainty regarding who the developer is in this matter, and surety that any financial commitments made are ongoing and will run with the approval. As you'll hear this morning, Fortescue is fully committed to undertake all works necessary to facilitate safe airport operations at their cost and on an ongoing basis. To ensure there's no ambiguity, we have proposed condition 16 at Appendix 1, which outlines the requirement for an agreement to be entered into for the approval to be given effect by the developer and any subsequent operator of the facility. These represent two core issues identified by the Shire. We consider the proposal provides sufficient surety that those aspects are addressed or are capable of being addressed through conditions. Just touching on the planning framework briefly, it's apparent from the reporting of the proposal that from a planning perspective, the planning merits of the proposal are not at all in dispute. The proposal is consistent with the environmental objectives of the Shire's strategic community plan, consistent with the strategic goals of the state, well located within an area identified as potential wind energy area under the State Planning Strategy 2050, and consistent with the statutory planning framework at both local and state levels. In relation to the Southern Cross Aerodrome itself, the proposed wind farm will result in the requirement to amend procedures for runway 1432 and develop new instrument flight procedures for runway 0927. This change would provide an improvement to the aerodrome, particularly in low cloud conditions where aircraft currently rely on a visual approach for landing. Maroomba Airlines have confirmed this will be, quote, extremely beneficial to their operations, and the Royal Flying Doctor Service has no objection to the proposal. The Shire's reasons for refusal centre around funding arrangements between the Shire and the wind farm developer, which are separate to the planning application before you today. And Martin and Paul will speak to those items separately shortly. However, acknowledging the need for a formalised arrangement between the wind farm developer and the Shire for procedural changes to the aerodrome and a costs agreement, we have drafted condition 16 to address this matter. And while commercial funding arrangements of this nature are not ordinarily planning considerations, the Development Assessment Panel have imposed conditions of approval in the past which link future costs for works associated with the proposal, but which are external to the development site. Examples of those similar conditions are provided in the email submission provided to the Shire on 7th of March 2024, which is the covering email included attachment Appendix 2 of my written deputation. Appendix 2 also sets out how the applicant team has addressed the 5 deferral reasons from the regional JDAP resolution of 20 December 2023. And in summary, I note that a revised aviation impact assessment was provided in February this year, which concluded that the proposal will not constrain the implementation of instrument flight procedures aligned with runway 0927. This also aligns with the findings of the feasibility study received in January this year. In relation to runway 1432, the aviation impact assessment notes that the proposed changes would not cause an adverse impact to the aerodrome or those who use it. The Royal Flying Doctors have also validated this. The revised aviation impact assessment also highlights clear benefits associated with procedural changes as the aerodrome becomes more accessible to aircraft, and therefore procedural updates will provide a net benefit to the aerodrome. This finding was also endorsed in February by Maroomba Airlines, the largest commercial operator using the aerodrome on a recurring basis. And finally, revised development plans have been submitted in February, identifying the location of the turbines. Both the feasibility study and aviation impact assessment have addressed the micrositing issue and confirmed that micrositing within a 500-metre tolerance will not impact safety or the ability to develop instrument flight procedures for the aerodrome. Drive conditions addressing micrositing are included at Appendix 1 of my written deputation. So the applicant team has clearly made significant progress in resolving the aviation issues through the course of the planning assessment process since the JDAP decision in December last year. And we say there's no planning basis for the project to be refused. And for these reasons, we seek the JDAP support in approving the renewable energy project. Thank you. And I'll pass you on to Martin from Fortescue. Thank you.
Okay, so I'd just like to thank everyone for the opportunity to present here today. So I'm here to represent Fortescue Energy, the entity identified as a developer within the RAR. And I'm here to, I guess, give a bit of an overview of the efforts that we've gone to address the Shire's concern around the funding arrangements for the aerodrome Southern Cross. So Fortescue Energy took ultimate ownership of the wind farm project via the owning entity Southern Cross Wind towards the end of last year. For the purpose of clarity, Fortescue's engagement has been on behalf of Southern Cross Wind with the Shire. Since this time, Fortescue have been involved in commercial discussions related to the project, with key among them being a commercial arrangement with the Shire with respect to the implementation and maintenance of updated aviation procedures as a direct result of the wind farm. A commercial arrangement was originally requested by the Shire in early December, whereby I was advised that a memorandum of understanding would be sufficient for the Shire to recommend an endorsement of the application. Given the RAR was due only 7 days later, this didn't allow enough time for Fortescue to develop an acceptable agreement by the Shire standards. It's Fortescue's view, however, that an agreement in principle had been reached with the Shire, but was yet to be legally written. Due in part to this, the application was deferred back in December. During the deferral period, Fortescue continued to engage with the Shire in an effort to secure a commercial arrangement with the Shire. Multiple meetings were held in January, culminating in a draft binding letter of intent that was submitted on the 2nd of February 2024. The draft binding letter of intent was an initial starting point with a high degree of care taken to address the concerns and requirements of the Shire, noting here that a binding letter of intent provides identical legal provisions as a memorandum of understanding. Feedback and comments related to the letter of intent were requested on multiple occasions, whereby Fortescue continued to outline a commitment to satisfying the Shire's concerns. The correspondence can be found in the appendix of Tom Hockley's overall deputation. An official letter response was not received from the Shire until the 23rd of February, almost three weeks later. This letter being titled a Southern Cross Aerodrome Letter of Intent, included in the RAR. This letter response was disappointing for a number of reasons, not only due to Fortescue's transparency and willingness to work with the Shire, but predominantly as no constructive pathway forward was offered. In addition to no pathway being offered, the individual leading the negotiation on behalf of the Shire commenced an extended period of leave the day the letter response was sent, which provided us little opportunities to resolve before today's hearing. A response was provided in early March, as shown in Appendix 2 of Tom Hockley's deputation, whereby Fortescue reaffirmed their commitment to working constructively with the Shire, in addition to extending an offer to continue discussions. The general response from the Shire, however, was to continue with a recommendation to reject, as per the letter received on the 23rd of February, thus providing a clear indication that the lack of a commercial arrangement is in no part due to a lack of effort or transparency on Fortescue's behalf. This contradicts the Shire's early guidance in December 2023 that an MOU or a binding LOI in this case would be sufficient for project endorsement. Fortescue is and continues to be committed to securing an amicable commercial agreement with the Shire. We understand the Shire has a commitment to their local community and we're not challengers in any shape or form. And overall, we have agreements in principle with the Shire as to how this would be managed in the future. We therefore encourage JDAP to approve the development with the conditions as proposed by Tom Hockley's deputation that's come before me. Pass across to Mr. McQueen.
Good morning, Mr. Presiding Member, members of the panel. Can you both see and hear me clearly? Thank you. By my calculation, I think I have slightly over 4 minutes left of the 15 minutes allocated. Is that a correct assessment?
Very correct.
Thank you very much. I'm going to draw your attention, if I may, to two primary documents. The first is the RAR, which hopefully you have accessible to you, and the second is the letter from Lavin, filed on Monday this week. If I could start with the RAR. The thrust of my submission is to point out politely what is a illuminated bright light distinction created by the RAR in terms of, on my left hand, appropriate planning considerations and framework with which we say we are fully compliant. And on the other hand, which you can hopefully see on the screen, inappropriate and irrelevant commercial considerations. If I could ask you firstly, please, to turn to paragraph 9 on page 3 of the RAR. The RAR correctly notes that the issue of achieving an agreement over costs is separate to the planning system. It then asserts that no procedural changes can be implemented without the Shire's agreement as owner of the aerodrome. It's inappropriate to put forward commercial non-planning considerations as a lever to try and prevent an appropriate project from being approved. The second paragraph I'd like to draw your attention to is on the top of page 6. And remind, I probably do not have to do this, but politely I would, that the RAR at the meeting of December 23, and I quote, accepted that the DAP application is appropriate for consideration as a renewable energy facility, land use and compatible with the objectives of the scheme. So that reinforces the point made by the first speaker that our project does in fact comply and is appropriate for approval on that basis. If you go to then, please, page 21 of the RAR, and the conclusion says that there are outstanding aviation issues that have not been resolved. Well, that is not true with respect. What is at the moment the case is that the owner of the aerodrome is yet to accept what we have done through our consultation with the appropriate authorities and agree to us effectively paying for those costs. And the answer to that is for the DAP to impose either condition 16 in the form put forward by us or an amended form of that condition. And then you'll see that there's an alternative recommendation on page 22, which talks about a further 6 months. Well, we resist that with respect because we've used the time since the December meeting to effectively resolve all of these issues. And the fact that the Shire is troubled about the commercial consequences is a little moment in my respectful submission when Fortescue has confirmed it'll pay for everything and the solution is to impose a condition ensuring that is the case. If I could then quickly turn to the Lavin letter, and there are 5 paragraphs I'd like you to focus on. I won't go through them all in detail. First is paragraph 5 and the second is paragraph 10, where I reinforce my oral submissions about a distinction between the commercial considerations and the appropriate planning framework. In terms of paragraph 12, I talk about these so-called off-site impacts. I've said several times already that the solution, if the DAP feels it necessary, is to impose a condition in the form of condition 16. I settled that condition to ensure that it wasn't seen as ambulatory and inappropriate at all. I don't believe that it's necessarily the case that a condition of that precise form is needed, but the applicant would accept it. And then in terms of paragraph 27, the point is made that the consultation with the relevant bodies has occurred. The amendments to procedures have been agreed. They are supported by the aviation operators, and simply putting forward commercial blocks in the form of we're scared about the costs of doing this and how we're going to be paid isn't, with very great respect, a relevant matter for you to focus upon when determining this matter. Consistent with what has been said by my previous colleagues and speakers, I would embrace the opportunity for this very worthwhile project to be implemented, and therefore invite you to ignore the recommendation for refusal, to grant an approval, and ask any questions you may have in terms of the proposed conditions that we have put forward. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this proposal, and I think I may be a few seconds over the 15 minutes. Please forgive me for that prolix.
Thank you, Mr. McQueen.
Conclusion.
Panel members, questions of the presenters? Yes, Ms. Baxter.
Probably my first questions could be to Tom Hockley and Martin Anderson. Firstly, can you just explain this ownership structure to me? Because in the RAR, we have the owners as the Guarinis, which are probably a farming family. Who owns the land at the moment?
Yes, so that's correct. The parcels are owned by the original owners, being the farming families, and the way that as far as I understand, and Ross, jump in to correct me, but the land holdings or the portions of the sites that are going to be used for the turbines have been secured on a 25-year lease through the landowners by Yilgarn, by Fortescue. Yeah.
Okay, so you're not purchasing the whole of the land, it's only the places where the turbines are going to go. Okay, so who is Yilgarn Holdings?
So Yilgarn Holdings are the original proponents who I suppose developed the initial concept, and then the project developed by Yilgarn Holdings has been essentially sold to Fortescue.
Okay, but then it was mentioned that Southern Cross Wind Proprietary Limited is the owning entity. Yeah. So what does that mean?
So sorry if I'm making
Yeah, sure.
But Southern Cross Wind is a special project vehicle. It's a proprietary limited company that's set up specifically to contain the assets and IP retained within this particular project. That is the entity that was transferred from Yilgarn Holdings across to Fortescue through the transaction Mark referred to last year. So that is the project body.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then Fortescue Energy would be the operator of the wind farm, is that correct?
Yes, we'd be the owner of that company. That Southern Cross Wind would be the operator, but under the ownership of Fortescue. So,
okay, all right. That let me just park that structure for the moment. Can you just clarify for me? The aerodrome has an east-west runway and a sort of a northwest-southeast runway. Which one is 0927 and which one is 1432? I couldn't find that in any documentation. Which was which?
I'm pretty sure the diagonal runway is the 0927 runway. Is that right?
I think that's mine.
Yeah, and the east-west is the 1432. Yeah.
Okay. All right, they both look to be about the same length.
Yep.
All righty. Now, it wasn't specifically mentioned in the RAR, but you mentioned, Tom, that this is a community project, or at least this energy will contribute energy. This project will contribute energy back to the grid. It's not a private generation, if you like. Okay.
No, that's right. Yeah, I think it's intended to be connected to the southwest interconnected system, the Swiss. Yeah. The Swiss is the acronym, but that's I suppose the vehicle that distributes the energy to the.
Okay. Now, one of the things Mr. McQueen mentioned, but others have mentioned it as well, is that the aerodrome is to something irrelevant from a planning consideration. In which case, why was an aviation assessment done?
Well, with wind farm proposals within a certain nautical mile distance of an aerodrome, an assessment effectively has to be undertaken to determine whether the introduction of structures has any, I suppose, implication on the aerodrome's operations, basically.
So it is a relevant consideration.
Ms. Baxter, could I assist through you, Mr. Chairman? I'm not asserting that safety issues associated with the operation of the aerodrome are irrelevant considerations. I'm rather saying that the question of payment and commercial arrangements to ensure the procedure are amended, not matters that are relevant in the determination of the merits. As a consequence, we say we've dealt with the safety procedures and the aerodrome operation and therefore satisfied that consideration. Just to clarify.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McQueen, when you say a commercial arrangement, are you suggesting that the Shire wants to make money out of this commercial arrangement?
No, I'm not suggesting that. What I'm saying is that the question of how it's paid for is a commercial matter, and that can be dealt with through a condition. Any concern that the Shire has about the costs, given we're prepared to pay, becomes an irrelevant consideration. Okay,
so just picking up on that point as well, is one of these companies, whoever, Fortescue Energy, just call it for that, are you prepared to pay all the costs that might be incurred by the Shire, including possibly their legal costs, to examine any legal documents? So you've got some costs in terms of developing this new instrument, landing procedure, etc. Surely you're bearing those costs, and ultimately there probably will need to be some sort of legal agreement. It's all very well having MOUs and LOIs, but there's going to need to be a legal agreement because, as just established, there are a number of companies involved here. There's the original landowners, there's leasing, there's Yilgarn Holdings, which perhaps passed it on to Southern Cross Wind. So there's quite a complexity of company structure there. And that's a lot, I guess, for a sort of a kind of a rural Shire to get its head around. So what I'm asking is, would the applicant generally be prepared to bear the Shire's legal costs?
We'd certainly entertain that.
Entertain that?
Well, it's not off the table. Like we're happy to. We understand the Shire's. We've got more resources, I suppose, within Fortescue, so we're happy to have that discussion. That discussion hasn't been had at this stage, but okay. Absolutely, we understand the position. So.
Yeah.
Ms. Baxter, if I could clarify, my understanding of my instructions is Fortescue has agreed to meet all of the relevant costs, and my advice to them would be, as part of standard commercial practice, that the costs of the Shire associated with the deed imposed as a condition would fall within that range. It's just that I think the question has caught my client a little off guard, but that would be my advice, and my understanding is they've agreed to pay the cost.
All right, thank you for putting that on the record. No further questions from me at the moment. Thank you.
Yes.
Just a few questions. You redid the aviation assessment report. So in doing that, one of the things that concerns me is the 500 metres that you're going to and from. Were you able to model all the turbines in all the different sequencings or scenarios of the 500 metres and then present that to the aerodrome and say, look, it'll be okay? Or...
Yeah. So certainly within the scope of the aerodrome risk assessment, we included with the aviation experts to allow to assess the impact of a movement within 500 metres of any of the current proposed locations and whether that would materially change any of the procedures or the mechanisms by which we maintain the current operational status of the airport. That was considered. They have confirmed in that report it makes no difference to the requirement for procedures or any operating levels or any changes as a result.
And is it still be able to meet all the setbacks?
Yes.
Setbacks in terms of lot boundary setbacks, yes. And the lot boundary setbacks will be controlled through the site plan, which nominates, I think, a 100 metre setback from each lot boundary. So there'd be a limited sort of amount of movement on some sites, depending on their orientation. But yeah.
My next question is: there's some mining tenements that sit, although it's a small portion. Have you got access arrangements, agreements within mine and tenement holders?
Yes, so as per the reports in the original application, all tenement holders we have made contact with or attempted to make contact with. The most advanced of those is a company called Cooler Gold. We've had face-to-face meetings with them, and that's documented in the paperwork. They're all at very early exploration stages within those tenements. There's been constructive dialogue around compatible land uses or use of the land and the resources going forward in the event that they find something of commercial nature, but it is still very much in the exploration stage.
So is your agreement finalised, or that's still being negotiated?
No, so they Cooler Gold, as the most active, are only undertaking early works to assess the area for mineralisation. They have not necessarily got a project per se, so there's no basis for which to agree way forward, because they're not trying to speak for them. They're not sure if they've got anything that's worthwhile yet. And that's documented as per the previous December submission, the correspondence.
And with Southern Cross, I've read through that all the costs regarding procedures and maintenance for the life of the project for 25 years, you'll carry those costs. And you've also mentioned that you've had quite a few meetings with the CEO, etc. Besides a verbal, has there been a written commitment to the Shire? Have you written any of the letter of intent or so forth? Just clearly say that you will do that?
Yeah, so there's been written correspondence on a number of occasions. Probably the most recent written correspondence was on the 7th of March from Martin Anderson of Fortescue to the acting CEO, confirming or reiterating the commitment by Fortescue to pay the flight procedure costs and the ongoing maintenance costs associated with that. And that's included at Appendix 2 of my deputation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McQueen, if the commercial arrangement is, as you suggest, an irrelevant planning consideration, then why is there a need for condition 16? And including condition 16, does that make it then a relevant planning consideration?
So I don't consider the commercial arrangements a relevant planning consideration, but to assuage any concerns in terms of the risk to the Shire, notwithstanding, we don't think it's strictly a relevant matter, we've put forward condition 16. Because when you read the RAR, as I've tried to point out, the majority of it is about the Shire's concerns with respect to potential risk associated with cost and maintenance. And we can deal with those concerns by the imposition of a condition, which the client's accepted. That doesn't, with respect, Mr. Hine, turn it into a relevant planning consideration. It's just a condition that we would agree to the imposition of if the panel is concerned about the points that the Shire has raised. I hope that makes my position clear on it.
Does that potentially then make the condition an invalid condition if it's an irrelevant planning consideration?
Well, conditions can be imposed through consent. It's a legitimate condition because it meets the test in my view, yet I would say there's another option open to you, which is to approve it without that condition, and we just have our own commercial arrangements with the Shire, a little bit like our own commercial arrangements with any of the mining tenement operators. So there's a vast range of things which are commercial in nature that people have to deal with, as the panel would understand, subsequent to the grant of the approval. And you don't have to contemplate all of those in the approval. If the panel is against us in terms of granting it based on purely planning merit, then we will accept that condition. But I say it's not obligatory or, in fact, necessary.
Further questions? Yes.
Thank you. Paul and the applicants here, just picking up on your premise that if the condition wasn't imposed, condition 16, and you would enter into some sort of other arrangement with the Shire, and knowing that there is this need to amend the takeoff and landing procedures for planes, how would you get around that if the Shire simply was unwilling to agree to that? How do you get around that?
Well, that becomes a commercial risk associated with the project, because there's an acceptance by the proponent that in light of the consultation and the aviation advice, the procedures need to be changed. The Shire's reluctance to conclude the matter appears to be based on commercial considerations, not because the amendment to the aviation procedures hasn't been agreed. So we'd need to sort that out with the Shire. Equally, if you impose the condition, we're still left in the same position because the condition as drafted requires the entry into agreement with the Shire. So we're comfortable either with the condition or without it, that we'll be able to come up with a form of agreement that the Shire will be happy with. They just want to know that it's not going to cost them anything. So we can sort that out. So that's really the answer to your question. I accept we cannot implement any approval you grant us without changing the procedures, and we need to reach an agreement with the Shire via condition 16 or outside it. And if we don't, then we'll have to approach it another way.
Okay, so your client takes that risk because the Shire may not agree at all at the end of the day. And just to put back on the record that if this was to proceed, whether with or without condition 16, one of these companies is prepared to bear all the costs.
Yes. Yeah, so two things. One, we accept the procedures have to be amended and we know what those changes are. They've all been agreed. And two, we know we have to pay for it. And if we don't reach an agreement with the Shire, as with other approvals in life, if you don't get the commercial side sorted out, it never happens. But we're hopeful and confident we'll be able to resolve that.
All right, thank you.
And probably just to add to that, in terms of the procedures themselves, the procedures will benefit the operations of the aerodrome, particularly in relation to 0927, because it allows essentially aircraft to land in all weather conditions. So it improves the safety of the aerodrome. 1432 is slightly different because they've already got procedures there, and I think because the runway is slightly narrower, it's used for less types of aircraft, mainly I think the flying doctors who will access it regardless. But so the reason I make that point is I think everyone is in agreement that the flight procedure changes will be of a benefit to the aerodrome. It's really just nailing down the cost agreement for it. Yeah, and that's where the risk lies.
Yeah.
And if I could just clarify that runway 27 is actually the east-west runway, not the northwest.
Okay, so 0927 is the east-west.
Costs. Have you got any idea of what the cost's going to be in doing all this work and over a 25-year period? And has that been presented to the Shire?
Yeah, we can just speak.
The costs and of doing all the changes and approach and so forth, and the maintenance over the 25-year period for the asset.
Yes.
Has that been presented to the Shire?
I believe it has. The Shire also sought independent costing of what that looks like, and they can perhaps talk to that. So in order to develop the new procedures, amend the existing, fly and test, validate those procedures is in the order of about between $70,000 and $100,000, which we were comfortable with. From an ongoing maintenance perspective, assuming a private entity maintains the annual validation of procedures, it's in the order of about $3,000 a year for the life of the project.
The other thing I should point out in terms of the relative quantum for the benefit of the panel on instructions from my client yesterday, to show you the commitment, we have invested almost $250,000 in the consultation with the aviation authorities and the development of the plan. So the cost to us of implementing those changes and maintaining the facility is less than the amount we've already spent on proving it up. You'll also observe in the conditions we're prepared to pay for the decommissioning. I had to make a submission once to a judge about the financial capability of Lloyd's of London, which was met with a smile because his honour seemed to understand it. I'd say respectfully something fairly similar about Fortescue Energy. I don't think there's any concern, and we're happy to answer it if there is, about the financial capacity of Fortescue to meet those sort of magnitude of order of cost. We just need to get the piece of paper and sign off on it with the Shire.
Thank you. Thank you.
Further questions? No? Okay, thank you for that. And thank you, presenters. We'll move to Ms. Bushby the Shire of Yilgarn. Bushby, do you want to make a presentation or just take questions? I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I think the issues are mainly covered in the RAR. It's a little bit difficult for me, to be honest, because I haven't been involved in the commercial discussions between Fortescue and the Shire. I certainly agree that the proponents and Fortescue have acted in good faith. I think the Shire's acted in good faith as well. I think they just haven't come to a position where the Shire is comfortable that there's not going to be ongoing implications, not just in terms of costs, but also their choice of suppliers, having to potentially move away from a free service provided by Air Services Australia to a private company for ongoing maintenance. Costs are only one element. There are other management issues to do with the aerodrome that the Shire had concerns over. Unfortunately, the CEO is on leave at the moment, so it's difficult without his presence to make any further comment on that. I guess the only other point I'd like to make is not just the costs. I think we all understand that Fortescue is willing to pay those costs. I think from a planning perspective, my real concern is that we have a wind farm that's going to impact on the aerodrome, whether it be positive or negative. It will essentially mean that there has to be changes to procedures for that aerodrome, and we don't have consent. We really have an objection from that aerodrome owner. I put a high degree of weight on that objection.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Ms. Bushby? Yes.
You probably had a chance to look at the conditions that were proposed by Tom Hockley.
Yeah, I think most of the conditions that Tom's proposed are based on some earlier conditions that I had previously drafted as part of the first RAR, so I don't have any objections to the wording of those conditions. As I've explained in my response to the presentations, I don't agree with the proposed condition 16. I don't think that does pass the test of being fair and reasonable, and I prefer that not to be a condition of the development approval.
Okay, further questions? Councillor Close, no questions?
No, I've come in on late on this as well, but picking up the pieces, we have a council meeting this afternoon that we'll be going to. The discussions and our CEO returns on Monday.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you to Ms. Bushby. I'm going to propose that we adjourn to seek legal advice from our legal representative here. So I'm seeking a mover in a second. Yes, thank you, Newman, and I'll second that. Thank you. So we're adjourning for, yes, all in favour? Yes. Against? You're against, are you, Councillor Close, or? Let's see. 4, thank you. We'll adjourn for a period of 15 minutes, I suggest. So I'll leave it to the operators here to move people around electronically.
Councillor Close, it's Ashley from the DAP Secretariat. Have you got your mobile phone handy? I will give you a call on that. Yep, great. And we're just going to put our camera on stop video and mute, and we'll remove everyone from the room bar the panel. Thank you.
Brunswick. Yeah, how are you?
Councillor, I just wanted to let you know, for whatever reason, you and I are in the same room together, so I don't say anything confidential you don't want me to hear.
There you go. I'm just yeah.
Are you there? Yeah. Start here. So they're not letting anyone in.
Oh.
Oh, okay. So when it comes back up, when your little window comes up, there's 3 little buttons at the top. Press there.
Look, waiting for me.
Hello.
That's what she was told.
Yeah, everyone.
Thank you. No, so I'll recommence the meeting. Welcome back. We'll now move on to the item, which is, sorry, 3.1. There is a responsible authority report with a recommendation for approval with some reasons. For refusal, with some reasons for refusal. I'm seeking a mover and seconder for the RAR recommendation. Is there a mover? Yes, thank you, Lindsay Baxter. Is there a seconder for that? Yes, thank you. Angie, thank you. Over to you, Ms. Baxter.
Thank you. I will speak to the item. If it wasn't for the aerodrome, the proposal for a wind farm in this location would probably be approvable, having regard to all the relevant submitted documents in support of the application. However, I'm mindful of the legal advice provided to the Development Assessment Panel, which is preferred in this instance over the legal advice furnished by the proponent, which is that the panel is constrained from approving the application and certainly not subject to condition 16 as proposed by the applicant. The 2 land uses may be separate, but they are intrinsically linked. I don't accept the argument by Lavin Legal as advocated at points 21 and 22 of their advice that the aerodrome should not be given due regard as a planning consideration. After all, they've had an aviation assessment done, which makes certain recommendations, or that it is the responsibility of the operator owner of the aerodrome to take steps to respond to a new land use. The purpose of planning is to make sure that all land uses are safe and compatible. To say that an existing land use must change its practice in order to respond to a new land use, in my view, abrogates another purpose of planning, which is not to cause sufferance to an existing land use by off-site impacts. I would also point out that the general land use planning principles of State Planning Policy No. 1 support that premise. I would like to support this application. I really would, because it's a new energy proposal. But I'm unable to, having regard to the unresolved issue with respect to the Shire of Yilgarn's hesitation about the safe and secure and continuity of operation of the Southern Cross Aerodrome. I do appreciate the efforts made by the applicants in drafting letters of intent, but it would probably need to go further than that. There would need to be an actual signed legal agreement that deals with all the eventualities, all the companies involved with regard to future and proposed operators of the wind farm between the Shire and the proponents, and which deals with, amongst other things, the instrument flight matter procedures before the planning application could be reconsidered. This does not appear to me to be a commercial arrangement that the Shire is seeking. It is seeking certainty that its asset can be protected and continue to operate. It is noted that the proponent has stated that they would willingly bear the cost of the requirements and the recommendations in the aviation assessment. However, I also note the advice provided by Ms Bushby on behalf of the Shire that her client does not have access to the finances that may be required for independent review of any legal documentation prepared by the applicant. I just can't get to the point, notwithstanding all the information provided today, where I'm comfortable with approving this application, and accordingly I move for the application to be refused. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms Brumji has the second.
I would like to concur with the Deputy Presiding Member's comments. It's very important that I think should be emphasised that nothing per se against the project of having renewable energy coming onto the site, into the Shire and onto the Swiss. However, given the concerns that has been expressed by the Shire with regard to safety, to procedures and to the engineering concerns, which has a lack of uncertainty, probably has certainty in the applicant's mind, but it seems there is not that much certainty in the Shire's mind. So on that basis, and with the reasons put forward by the Deputy Presiding Member, I second for the refuse.
Thank you. Councillor Close, do you wish to speak?
All I say is the council don't have any issues with the actual project itself because of renewable energy. It's just these knowledge of what's going to happen to our asset as the aerodrome.
Thank you. I to support the recommendation for refusal. I would like to actually amend the recommendation by adding a number of points. So I'm guessing I'm starting at D, and the D would read, the DAP agrees with Mr McQueen's submission dated 18 March 2024 at paragraph 12 that the Shire is a third-party landowner and operator of the Southern Cross Aerodrome. E would be the DAP considers that proposed condition 16 is futile and not valid because it is not enforceable on the Shire of Yilgarn as a third-party landowner and operator of the Southern Cross Aerodrome. Point F, this development application proposes many significant elements that are inadequate, unresolved, and which lack the level of certainty and finality that would be required of a valid planning consent. For example, proposed turbine locations with a maximum potential of variance of 500 metres lacks finality and certainty. And G, approval of the wind farm without the Shire of Yilgarn's willing agreement, in brackets, as the third-party airstrip landowner and operator, close brackets, would put in jeopardy and adversely impact the use of the airstrip as an important facility that provides for the social, economic, health, emergency and general amenity needs of the local community in the public interest. So I'm moving that as an amendment. Is there a seconder for that? Yes, Ms Baxter, thank you. Just to, I suppose, take that a bit further, I'm really concerned, as it's been said, I have no issue with a wind farm. That is not the point here. It is that there is, to me, this is underdone and it needs to have greater certainty around this proposal, particularly the likely impact on the airstrip. And while it is possible for the airstrip to continue operating, they'll have to change their methods and procedures. And I just don't think that imposition should be made on them. So I'll hand over to Lindsay Baxter as the second for those additional points.
Thank you. I don't really have anything further to add. I think the additional 4 or 5 reasons for refusal are appropriate in this circumstance. Really nothing further to add in terms of argument for those.
Okay, are there further speakers on that amendment? No, thank you. I'll put the amendment then. All in favour? Yes, thank you. That's carried unanimously. So I don't think there's any further speakers. Back to you, Ms Baxter, as the move of the original substantive motion to wind up the debate.
All right, thank you. I actually don't really have any further comments to make other than what I read out, so thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll now put the refusal as amended. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. There are no Forms 2, there are no SAT matters. Will be noted. Is there any general business? No. Okay. I'll close the meeting at 10:50. Thank you for your attendance, everybody.